We are so pleased to have you with us today on Take 10. We come to you every week with a look at a variety of health and welfare issues as they affect caregivers and caregiving. I'm Ron Arron, along with our co-host, Dr. Jamie Huysman. Dr. Huysman is Chief Compassion Officer, Project Omega at WellMed Medical Management. You may know him from his expertise as a caregiving expert as well as an expert on addictions. And Carol Zernial, our co-host, holds a master's degree in social gerontology, 30 years experience in the field. She's the co-chair of the Raise Family Caregiving Advisory Council and executive director of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And Carol, as we approach Thanksgiving and then the holidays that follow, you've got a pretty good topic for us.
Well, you know, Ron, every year holidays come faster and faster, and there are things every year that we don't go well. And so, Jamie, how do we, as caregivers, taking care of family members, trying to celebrate, how do we keep from falling in the same holes again and again every year?
It's so funny you call them holes, because our charity, the Star Foundation, or it used to be the TAR Foundation, TAR Network, calls them tar pits. Toxic abusive relationship pits. How do we not bite the bait? How do we not react to Uncle, John or Ernie down the street there? Sorry, I meant to Ernie. Didn't mean Ernie to be your husband, but I meant from Tommy from The Who. How's that? How do we not kind of bite the bait and jump into that hole or that tar pit? And I think that's a great question for us to talk about. So if you're a caregiver and coming into the holidays, it's extra stress. Obviously, this is not just being with the family of origin, which is always usually the original sin for stress and anxiety. It's also that you now have pressure on you to be all these things to all these people, to make Thanksgiving, to make Christmas, to make Hanukkah, all like it was traditionally, like the memories. And what happens during this time, especially if a loved one with a chronic terminal acute illness, is those memories start really triggering us more and more. So we start feeling grief reactions. It's not like it was before. Anyway, it's an assault of the senses for a caregiver. And so we're going to invariably, if we're not having boundaries, if we're not taking ourselves first, if we're not what I call emotionally regulating, we are going to fall into the holes of holidays, the tar pits of life. We are going to find our energy levels sapped if we try to dance, as my mom would say, at everybody's wedding. If we don't find the need to adapt and realize that we have to not live life in the black and white, but we have to start adapting. And if we're not able to outsource and get other people engaged, we are going to go down that holiday hole, and shame on us because it's right in front of us. It's a trigger. So I think it's a great thing to talk about today.
And Ken, the caregiver who historically was also the one who provided the holiday meals and the Thanksgiving and the Christmas or the Hanukkah or Passover, which comes in the spring, can they step back and say, hey, I can't do this anymore. It's a tar pit for me?
That's such a healthy response, Ron, and I wish our caregivers could give that. You really need to have coaching sessions all around the world, but at least start in San Antonio. Because that's a boundary. And I would draw that boundary for my own, if I was a caregiver, for my mind, body, and spirit. What can I actually handle? Heck, I've been handling mom and dad or the uncles, for all this time. How can I delegate? How can I outsource? Because right now I need respite. I need to take care of myself with all this assault of the senses, and so I think it's a great thing for you to say, look, I need to be quarterback of this holiday. Mom or dad has maybe a memory issue. We need to calm it down for them. I'll be their advocate, but let the sister, brother, the church, the temple, the synagogue, let them do it. Let me step back and realize that expectations are the seeds of resentment. So let nobody expect anything from me. How's that?
Well, and let's look at the care recipient, because I think a lot of times caregivers underestimate the fatigue that comes with chronic pain or with an illness. And so I might be disappointed because mom just sat there and didn't participate, wasn't festive, wasn't part of the group, as opposed to asking mom, what's the most important part of this holiday for you? And maybe pick one thing all day. And that's it, so that we don't overtax the person that we're caring for.
What a great words of advice there. This does two things. It stimulates you and your loved one to have this conversation, to actually start where they are at, rather than where you think they should be. And that should always be the caregiver mantra. That's a therapist mantra. And so if you do that, you're able to advocate maybe for the lower energy of your mom or dad, or you had the conversation with, and be their sort of person. But that to me is a great starting point, and ask them how they feel, and then be able to be their advocate during the holidays. And it's a great conversation.
We'll pick it up in a moment, but I want to let folks know who may have just joined us. You're listening to Take 10. I'm Ron Arron, along with our co-hosts, Dr. Jamie Huysman and Carol Zernial, and we're talking about how to deal with that holiday tar pit, that hole that comes every year as we approach Thanksgiving. And Carol, you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, so we've talked about looking at the triggers. We've talked about the energy level it takes for both the caregiver and the care recipient. What are other holes that we might fall into during the holidays?
Wow. You know what? It's being all things to all people. It's the replication of our childhood, of our family, of getting the Christmas tree out, or having that particular turkey, or allowing people to basically see us as we were before, not as we are today. So we create this Broadway show. We think it's going to be great for everybody involved, but everybody must see and experience, I think, the evolution of the primary caregiver, of the loved one you're speaking about, who may have fear because it's chronic terminal acute illness. And I think we need to start where they're at, if you're family members. And if you're a caregiver, you do not, as Ron said last week, you do not have to be the Broadway show where you're the only star and everybody's the usher. You need to be the quarterback or the director and bring on other people and level set for everybody that it's not like it was before. So I do think our worst nightmares are our own expectations. It's the voices we tell ourselves. It's, instead of being in the moment, it's like escaping to the anxiety of yesterday or the fears of tomorrow. So a lot of breath work, a lot of emotional regulation, and like settle your expectations down. It's going to be different.
Well, in terms of being different, what about the idea of doing something different? Because it's not like it was before. Is that helpful?
I think it's great. I think establishing new traditions that is exactly where the loved one is at and exactly where the caregiver is at, where they can actually have their energy preserved, where they can have their mind, body, and spirit preserved, where they don't have to go out of their way and be dancing, like I said, at everybody's wedding and recreate the family's past. I think it's a nice time to set up new traditions, new connections, new ways of doing things. I think everybody would understand it, but I also think it requires, obviously, the primary caregiver or long distance caregiver to level set and make some real strategic plans after, as you said, Carol, consulting with the caree about what we're really looking at. How can we make it different, but how can we make it memorable?
Now, one of the issues you touch on, Dr. Jamie, is especially for family out of town who are used to coming in for those holiday celebrations, who don't know on a day-to-day basis, for example, that the care recipient may in fact be slipping away, may have dementia beyond what they had seen a year ago. How much should you share with them before they come to town?
A whole lot. And I think it's a problem. I'm sure Carol would agree with me that the caregiver themselves is not on their radar. It's happening now to my wonderful ex-wife, who I love dearly, with her father. And the caregivers, long-distance caregivers, really don't know what she's experiencing. And she's deluged, overwhelmed, besieged, and beleaguered. Forget what dad is experiencing. So I think that them not being in touch along the way is a problem, Ron. And I think that they should have ongoing, regular sort of meetings so they stay in the orbit of the primary caregiver, provide the primary caregiver support. And none of this should be a surprise to long-distance caregivers. Otherwise, there's a detach. And the last thing I'll say is get yourself a good geriatric care manager if you don't think your family can talk, and find a third party who can connect them all. Don't you think, Carol?
Yeah, I would just say maybe, and if you're going to have tough conversations from what you discover, plan that conversation as part of the weekend, maybe not during the big meal of the day.
No.
Right. And clearly not over Thanksgiving dinner. So thank you both to Carol Zernial and Dr. Jamie Huysman. I'm Ron Arron. We'll talk with you again soon right here on Take 10.